Happy New Year, folks. We made it. We made it out of 2020. It's 2021. It's definitely further into 2021 by the time you're watching this or listening to it. Welcome to another episode of Boldly Watched.
It's 2431, or what is the year here?
Well,
I don't know.
Star date, I guess.
2423.
2423?
I'm sticking to it.
You said it with confidence, so.
Hey, you know what else I'd say with confidence? Hegemony.
Okay, but it is a difference, I think, of British English and American pronunciation.
Well, Riker, I think, wouldn't.
Riker has never heard the word, and if Picard says it how he wants to, then, you know.
Hegemony.
It is hegemony, but...
Which is dominance over one country or social group. Dominance of one country or social group over others. It's not a good thing. So the era of European hegemony is era of bullshit. You know what I mean?
I think it's like Europe became... Well, doesn't Picard even say it was the beginning of a world world government? So it was when globalization was starting to happen. So Europe became what I guess the European Union is, and then instead of the little states being their own thing, they were all under the European Union. So it's kind of like it's like a consolidation of power of one entity over a bunch of them, which is, I guess, is kind of also how we're formed, right? We were 13 different colonies, and we came together under one government and became the United States. I think,
and we decided that with every transition of power, we are going to storm the Capitol building through the act of sedition, which is violence. In the transition of power, we went there. It happened yesterday.
And I think the hegemony part of that can be bad or good depending on like the context of it. It's just like the word of it is really just the control of one entity over like some others. Also, but it can be military and economics. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, historians generally study the bad things that happen.
but that's why Picard was trying to be positive about it, because he said it's the beginnings of world government, which is like globalization and like everybody coming together to form one power structure here.
As if it were foreshadowing something.
What episode is this?
It's a somewhat forgettable episode, Up the Long Ladder. The Enterprise.
Do we want to do this episode?
I kind of do, yeah. I enjoyed it more than I remembered enjoying it the first time.
Maybe you weren't paying attention to the right parts there, lad.
That's pretty good. You sound like her. You know,
accent I practiced, and you know what? What I know about farming women is that we wear way too much eyeliner.
She was the least farm-like of all of them. She had the most beautiful dresses too, and like all of them were pretty like burlap sack looking outfits for most part, but she had these wonderful gowns.
Because she demanded it. She's a strong woman, the likes of a Klingon woman, if you ask me.
I was gonna say before, like I had commented on Deanna Troy's makeup as being great this season. The makeup artist, I think, it had similar inspirations for hers because it was great.
She had great. Yeah.
I jumped on your synopsis of the episode from Memory Alpha.
You did. It's no problem. And actually, this synopsis is a little silly. It's the Enterprise discovers 2 threatened colonies which must cooperate to survive, which it's not silly. I guess it's the actual the definition. But like, we don't even discover the second colony until like 2/3 of the way through this episode. This episode is almost like 2 different things.
Yeah, I thought that the second colony, which we'll get to, you know, what they are and what they do later, but I thought they were more interesting and should have their own standalone episode.
Agreed. You know, Becca Scott, co-host of this show.
Hello, I'm Becca Scott, ensign.
Yeah, let me check my notes here. Ensign.
She looks down at her own collar. Well, I just wanted to mention that, like, when I saw, I think the character's name is Brena, right? Brena. I was like, whoa, Becca could play this role. Like, that turnaround.
Oh, do you think? Because I got a lot of Irish anger in me, or maybe it's German. We'll find out when I get my 23andMe results.
Okay. Maybe dial it down to 10.
This is the note for all of my acting.
Let's start back at a base of 10.
Well, Xander Jeanneret, where we begin this episode is with Worf's tummy troubles, right? I think he's up on he's up in the bridge, and he's just kind of like, and I was like, what happens during tense situations and people need to use the restroom? Like, do they step out? Because I know there is supposedly a washroom over on the left side, right? That we never see.
We looked at the blueprints.
Right. I think we talked about it in maybe the Riker episode too, but
right.
Did that ever tie in or get resolved?
Yeah, he had the measles.
Yeah, but we didn't. It was completely dropped after the first act.
Kind of, yeah. There was the small resolution with Pulaski because she's great and I love her.
It was a little romantic, and I liked that. We'll get to it.
I'm here for it.
Do you know my priorities?
Looks like your camera was unplugged.
Oh, Jake got upset.
I get it.
Interesting. Okay, gonna plug that camera back in.
This seems to be a new thing. If you're watching the video version, the fact that when you speak, the logo is pulsating is very exciting. That's new.
Ooh,
it's a feature,
not a bug.
Yeah.
So, the first thing we learn about an episode in the teaser is we hear the Galaga gameplay footage.
Oh yeah.
Pew, 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 pew. It's a recording from.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, is it asteroids or space invaders?
Definitely space invaders.
Hold on a
Good
second.
ear.
Let me fix this before we continue.
Well, then I'll just play with Miles O'Brien.
Yeah, look at little
Miles O'Brien. Hello. I'm so happy to see you here today.
Oh, O'Brien, your accent is a little different.
Oh, yes, it's me, Miles O'Brien. What is his accent? Is he a little bit,
He's Irish.
Picard, come to the transport bay. I've got to show you something. There's too much hay around these parts. How did that get transported?
The hay. Oh, yeah.
Hey. You know, this video is uncut on YouTube, so they're getting all this. There's his Jake.
Uncut. Oh.
I don't do no editing. No, I don't like to do the editing here. I got a bill.
If you notice, on that little O'Brien, if you look at the collar on his uniform...
He's Deep Space Nine.
Is it? I think it's still Next Gen, but we haven't gotten to... Oh, yeah. But that's his Next Gen uniform. But we haven't gotten to the collar era yet because it changes.
Oh, fun. Well, shout out to Lisa and Greg who sent me Miles here.
Aww.
I know I love him. And there are some photos on Instagram because Lisa is my older sister and my younger sister, Cynthia, made everyone a voodoo doll of themselves for Christmas and mailed it to us. She doesn't think they're voodoo dolls. I think they're clearly voodoo dolls, but she made beautiful little dolls of everybody. And then I also got Miles O'Brien, and so I made them kiss. The Becca voodoo doll is much bigger.
Did you feel anything in your body?
Every nerve was alive and firing.
You finally figured out how to feel.
Jake, what have you done? This never happened in 2020.
Oh,
Here you are. And there's Brena.
He returns from the gray dimension. Close, so close.
You know, I've done multi-hour streams on technical difficulties, and they're a big hit.
Some of my best work, really.
Yeah. Captain Jake?
My apologies. I'm not sure what's going down today. Okay. Where were we?
Let's start with the teaser. When we start hearing Admiral Pong wanting to talk about some weird audio text messages he got. Maybe it was a pocket dial or something. It sounds like someone's playing Space Invaders.
Right? Like I was instantly like, is that asteroids? What is that noise? And he asks him to even like ascertain like, what is that? Do you remember? And what is it like?
I think it was a distress signal sent by the goats and pigs.
Yes. in
Help
Moscow.
us.
And we meet the Bringloid.
Well, I just in this scene with them together, Picard is so proud of Riker. He's like, "Ooh, my number one figured it out, and it took them a full day to figure it out. Aren't you so smart?" And I was like, "Aw."
Beauties. Pick a feeling and stick with it, you know? Picard's secrets of
Hegemony.
acting.
So they've discovered, this beacon that's way out in a Terran beacon specifically, which means it's from Earth, and that it's old and it's not where it should be because there were no explorations out this
Hold on.
far.
Who do you think's listening to this podcast who doesn't know the meaning of the word Terran?
Well,
Okay. Actually, this is a good poll. Anybody who's listening who didn't initially know what the meaning of Terran is, let us know. Tweet us. Tweet Becca specifically.
yes, make sure to tag her.
And don't be ashamed. It's okay to not know that. There's no like pride here. I'm curious if Terran is a familiar term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where did you first learn the word Terran? Was it Star
I know
Trek?
specifically.
Oh.
You just
I
knew.
went to a theater program in my sophomore year of high school at Indiana University, and I had to memorize some obscure poem, and it had the word Terran in it.
Hmm.
Oh, interesting. Was it like a StarCraft poem?
Yeah.
Was it a Mirror Universe thing?
Did you say you went to high school at a university?
No, I did like a summer program for theater acting.
Gotcha. Someone has notifications up.
I know. I was ignoring it. Why can't you?
Because I don't want more of them during some of that wonderful audio you're giving us.
Tell people not to email me.
Oh, 1 second. Send everyone.
Fixed.
Oh.
Just like my dog.
Okay. So we rescue these people. They find a planet. Is it a planet? Yeah, they find a planet where there is a colony of people, and there's solar flares that are hitting the planet, and they're probably
It was a
going.
planet? I thought it was a ship.
It was a Class
Where
M
would they put the hay?
planet.
Say it, Xander.
Class M planet.
Do you know what a Class M planet is, Becca?
Do you remember?
Who would listen to this podcast that doesn't know what a Class M planet is?
Okay, so that's interesting. So if you don't know we've actually talked about it before on this podcast. It's a inhabitable planet by like most humanoid species. And
I
go ahead.
believe early on they say that there are 2 Class M planets or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, they do mention there's another one, but they kind of brush it off because they're trying to set that. They're planting that seed for the second colony, right?
Right.
So there's these solar flares. They're going to die if they don't get evacuated. Riker goes down on his own, and he just sends up a message. He's like, listen, there's some things you got to know. And Picard's like, no, let's just get him up there. He's like, yes, but. He's like, nope, just get him up.
Yeah.
Bring everything. Let's
No matter
go.
what.
Okay, so of course, whenever in doubt, just send Riker to go check it out. But there was this specific scene, the camera work. Okay, so Picard's staring at the green screen where we know the viewfinder is with the solar flare planet, and it just stays focused on Picard as we see Riker move into the background, get into the turbo lift.
Oh, yeah.
Out of focus. It wasn't a rack focus where you
No.
change the focal point, and it was not a deep focus, which is a very fancy thing where you can have 2 focal lengths. It was just stayed on Picard. I was like, no, keep standing there, keep standing there, keep standing there. He's in the turbo lift. Don't move, keep looking at the view screen. He's gone. End of scene. I was
I
like,
think
what?
it happens a couple of times, but that one I remember specifically like, oh, they were waiting for that exit and they were just sitting there.
Why?
It's a testimony to how good Patrick Stewart is as an actor that he has to sustain like an interested look for longer than he should, because the shot should be shorter than that, right? But these actors are at the whims of both the editors and the directors, and so they don't have a choice. They have to do what they can while they're on camera, however long that might be.
Well, this is why Gates McFadden got replaced this season, right? Because of that one shot where she was like, "Are you still going?" And you could see her eyes flickered over to camera and then back into the
But I think this, Jake, you had brought this up when we were in the earlier episodes of you hadn't remembered the music being such a big part of it. I think this is a stark contrast of they're keeping like the soap takes, the soap opera angles of wait until the scene is finished and a crescendo in the music. But when there's no music, you're just kind of waiting.
Yeah. The absence is just as noticeable as when it's there, right?
Yeah.
That shot was very interesting to me too, especially because really the only line he's like, just go down to the planet or something really base like that. And it's just like, okay, and we're still here. Yeah.
And I do want to bring up the other plot with Worf too, with the tummy troubles, because they do have the tea ceremony as thanks. And I love Dr. Catherine Pulaski. And this was the great scene.
Worf was feeling ill because he got a case of Rupak Ngor.
Yes. You've been working on your Klingon.
Thank you.
He's got a case of the Klingon measles, which is a childhood ailment. But what's her reasoning for him having it again? It can resurge or something? I didn't remember what she said.
I don't remember either.
Well, whatever it is, he's got it, and he's very embarrassed by it. And so and I wonder, Becca, if this endears you to her more.
Right.
She covers for him, and she gives a little white lie to Picard.
Mm-hmm.
She gets half a point for saying, actually, he was doing a Klingon fast and forgot that you have to stop moving so much when you do a fast or you fall down.
Why half a point? That's a great thing. This was one of the most endearing exchanges I thought with her.
No, it's pretty good. It's just like when you're so low on the points for
when the Pulaski bias is
the Pulaski bias.
Yeah.
You have to take that into consideration.
No, she's drawn on me. I like the tea ceremony, and I like that she kind of was flirty with Worf.
You know, I thought that for sure the tea ceremony, something about it was going to come back into play later on in the episode, like in some way, you know, some like, I don't know.
She gets Klingon measles.
Yeah. It was cut for time so they could have that exit of Riker at the beginning of the episode.
Right. You got to keep the important stuff.
Well, I like the tea ceremony too because it wasn't that they just drank tea. It's like she actually isn't supposed to drink it because it could poison her. And then she's like, you know what? Let's dance with the devil.
Yellow.
I'll drink this antidote. Yellow.
If she was really a badass, she'd take the antidote after.
Right.
Yeah.
But then Worf would have to administer it, and we've seen how he is at AIM. He would just miss.
He would leap over the desk to do it.
True.
And it would explode.
Okay, she does get 2 whole points in my book for drinking the tea. Because that's a badass move.
Okay, great. Several hundred more points to go. Well, we wrapped up the C plot, I guess, but we still have the A plot to deal with. So these colonists come on board, and they bring along with them some goats, and a bunch of hay gets transported. I've never seen so much stuff on the ground brought along with a transported team.
The detritus. Some say it's stuck in their clothes and their pockets because typically the things from the ground don't get brought along with you when you go through a transport.
Well, okay, so here's my working theory for that, because this is what Riker was trying to talk to Picard about, was that they wouldn't leave without the animals, right? And so there had to have been a conversation between Riker and O'Brien going, okay, like 16 life forms to beam up. And then further, him trying to explain to them, they don't need hay. We can replicate. We have magic food dispensers on our walls that will make the grass that will feed your animals, and them just not being convinced. And like, if you want us to go, it has to be the animals and the food for the animals, because that's how we live.
And the name of the person who is the father of the love interest, the head of the colony, Danilo Odell. He must have been the one that had this discussion.
Yes. Or I would also believe it was her putting, as we see later.
Well, no, because he definitely gets his first look at her in the cargo bay,
true.
right?
Riker
so
does,
so these people come on board. The leader offers O'Brien a flask of whiskey in one of the most cliche choices ever. It does work.
That becomes a character point for O'Brien.
I will say, like, as much as I was expecting to roll my eyes at this episode, and I did a couple times, I did find it pretty funny when Worf and Picard were walking towards the transporter room and a chicken leapt out, and this little girl grabs it and runs back in. And it's like completely silent when the door shuts, and then when it opens again, there's just chaos inside.
Yeah, well, quickly, let's just talk about the overall impressions of this episode, not as a whole, but just the characterization of these Irish colonists, and then the woman who wrote it, who we've loved her episodes in the past, Melinda Snodgrass.
You did some research.
Well, in general, the thing is, like, this is a racist depiction of Irish people, but at the same time, it's like a positive stereotype of the drinking, partying, carousing, and like living in the moment stereotype. So it's not as bad as other stereotypes that we've seen of modern day peoples. And even though they're not racist in this time period, they're still creating an episode in the 80s or in the early 90s where they only know what they know.
So how did you know? You just caught that Melinda Snodgrass wrote it. Like, you didn't do any research on this? Because you're right.
Ask him some memory, Alf.
Yeah. Well, I want to read her quote about it because I think it's really pertinent, because she didn't quite intend it to come out quite this way. From Memory Alpha, there's a listing here, or a quote from her that says, "It was intended to be a commentary about immigration because I hate the current American policy. I wanted to be something that says something. Sometimes these outsiders you think are so smelly and wrong-colored can bring enormous benefits to your society because they bring life and energy. That's what I was going for. Now, my boss at the time was Maurice Hurley, who was a major Irishman and leads the St. Patrick's Day parade. When I was describing to him what I wanted to do, I was trying to come up with an analogy, and I said it was like a little village of Irish tinkerers. And he loved it so much, he made them the Irish tinkerers. I said, okay, and that's how it came about." So, like, I think he got a little carried away with his, like, his embrace of the culture.
Well, because it's the same thing that we've run into in the past of them trying to transplant, like, Earth culture somewhere else in space and time because they had the props or the costumes or the actors or whatever. It's just that if they had just made them aliens, it would have worked. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, a bit of makeup, some bumps on your nose.
That's the fun of it being Star Trek anyway. Like, this plot could have almost happened on Earth. Like, we're out in space. Let's do space things. Yeah, I agree. Especially because, like, they already kind of made this mistake with Code of Honor.
Yeah. And
they don't need to make it again. Like, enough with this.
Right.
True.
Yeah. So we find the leader is what's even their problem? We need to figure out how to assimilate them back into society. And so there's a little bit of discussion about that, but most notably, Brena makes eyes to Riker. And
big hostile energy coming from Picard towards this whole civilization. It's very eye-rolly. Why are these people so?
Because he's English.
Yeah. Very English attitude here.
Well, he's French, but I mean, he's English.
Right. Well, I mean, the problem that they had was like a solar flare or something that was destroying where they were living, right? So they had nowhere to go. And like, before we knew about the other colony, the other colony, they were like, oh, we're going to drop them off on a starbase, and then they're someone else's problem.
Now, the other colony is on a different planet where they were originally headed, but then they got dropped off, or they had a ship that didn't make it there. There were two ships of the Mariposa, and one of them crash landed on this planet.
Did you know that Mariposa was Spanish for moth, I think?
Butterfly. Could you also define some other things? What is a spinning wheel, perhaps, Data?
Right. Oh, right.
There's a scene between Data and Picard where he just starts defining words, just all of them. Cool, Data. Cool.
Stop, Data. I liked that. I laughed at that part. It was good.
That scene had an interesting piece of information for my utopia-seeking brain, which was this ship took off after World War III when there was a neo-transcendentalism movement, like a new, of John Muir, was it? Or like the original transcendentalism was a reconnection to nature. And I think that's what we need now. And it seems like all we need is World War III to get there.
I mean, maybe there's better alternatives to getting there. Maybe like a library program or something. But yeah, World War III, sure.
Socialism.
A poster with a kitten that says "Hang in there."
Transcendentalism.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, ship of utopians.
Yeah. So Brenna and Riker become fast friends, and she makes a little visit to his quarters, and they have a great time.
Wash
don't
my
really
feet.
Washing.
Don't you know my feet are dirty? They
Mm.
look very clean to me, lady. There's no dirt on this ship. I want you to wash my feet.
Also, have they said out loud that they use sonic showers on starships or not yet?
You were the first one to, I
Oh,
think,
okay.
tell us that. I don't
Oh,
remember
okay.
them
It
bringing
might
that
come
up.
up in like Voyager or DS9 or something like that. But I don't know what they think the shower thing is now, but it's probably not sexy.
I just realized I have a big problem with this, and maybe the holodeck can fix it, but hot tubs are the greatest joy that life can
Oh,
bring.
sure. Yeah.
So what do they do about, are there sonic hot tubs? Do they have jets?
It's unclear.
Wait till you try a Sonic hot tub, Becca.
Yeah. It's just Sonic
I'm
the
ready.
Hedgehog.
Why did we do this with water when we could have done it with sound waves?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We do see, I think it's in one of the movies or in one of these episodes, we see like the vanity where it like pulls away and then there's like a water fountain that comes out.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Anyway.
Yeah, they try not to show too much bathroom stuff because I guess they just don't want to get into it.
There might be
It
censorship.
was not a thing
something.
shown on TV for
Yeah.
many decades.
Yeah, but like it was starting to be shown now. Like this is the late 80s. It's not like it's not like
Come
the
on,
Brady
man, this
Bunch
is
where
the
they were
90s.
sleeping in separate beds and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, actually, this was a pretty sexy scene. I thought that they had like, some great chemistry for how short their relationship was, which is pretty much those two scenes.
She was ready. She knew what she wanted, and
Yeah.
she went
Yeah,
for it.
she was,
She
man.
also had a costume change from the red outfit to the blue outfit with a higher crop top before walking into Riker's quarters. So that seems like the time. Okay.
Maybe there was,
That seems like the time.
right. Who knows?
And then she did a costume change in there and just got a little less clothing on.
Yep.
They were
she did.
great dresses though.
Yeah,
They
for
were
sure.
excellent.
She rocked them.
Underneath her blue skirt, she was wearing a different blue skirt that was like a slip, and that's how she's like, I'm ready, don't ya? It's good. Also, I remember what the lost scene between Pulaski and Worf was. So the tea was actually ayahuasca, but like
Right.
Klingon ayahuasca, and then
Yeah,
their
yeah.
heads just like turn into camels, and then they see space behind each other, and
This whole episode was a dream. It was a trip the whole time. Pulaski
all
and
a
Worf
fever
sped
dream.
bad
Now
days.
we are the measles. Well, so then we learn about there were two colonies.
The other colony?
The other colony?
Ask every
Clones?
time.
clones?
Hold on, we don't know that yet. You're
Clones?
jumping. You're jumping.
Clones?
Clones?
Shark.
Clones?
No, clones?
Clones?
They wanted to
That
make
is-
sure people understood all the syllables because it's not a common theme
Right.
at this
Okay.
point in time.
So yes, there is another colony. We go down to visit and we notice something a little strange.
That the one black guy gets no lines.
Mhm.
Amongst other things, yeah. Also, some of these people look eerily alike. And then there's these quadruplets?
Mm.
Quintuplets? Sextuplets? Clones.
Clones?
Clones.
Clones.
This society needs to die.
The line that he gives later, which is actually what the initial title
Prime
of the script
Minister?
was. He says, "Send in the clones." That's what this originally was called.
Pretty on point.
I have a big problem with this whole concept because asexuality exists and asexual people exist, and this is a weird, bizarre sci-fi way of just being totally disgusted at the concept of cloning and cloning oneself and what that means for your own identity. And I think
I don't think that's a reflection. You can think cloning is bad and weird, and asexuality is perfectly fine and normal. They're not
Sure,
mutually
well, I mean,
exclusive.
that they're making this the ultimatum. They're saying like either you have to become a society that accepts sexuality as a way to reproduce, or you have or which includes getting rid of cloning. And they're not saying that you can continue to live as a society because of this breach of cloning ethics.
Hey, you know what? You can be asexual and still artificially inseminate. There you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess cloning is different than asexuality to me, especially because with these people, they have an issue where like, aren't they getting weaker with their cloning? Isn't that what their problem is? They're dying out.
They're applying the method of like making copies in a copy machine because
Did you ever see the movie Multiplicity?
Right.
It perfectly illustrates all of this.
All of this
film.
is such a 90s concept of cloning in general, of like, okay, if I make a fax or a copy of a copy, it deteriorates over time because the copy can't be as good as the original. And also, when I clone
Save a
someone,
JPEG.
it's going, yeah, right? If I clone someone, I have the technology to make an exact replica of that person right now, how they look. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, no
there's so
gene
much wrong
splicing,
with
no
this.
editing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, remember that they have to grow up from babies.
Right. And so like just the concept of these people not being able to exist, even though they had found a workaround, they had found a way to live in peace without hurting other people, whether that be artificial insemination or cloning or whatever it is. The fact is they come in, the Federation or the representatives of the Federation come in and say, this is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. We're going to kill these clones, and we're going to force like sexuality on you by bringing this population into your area. I get it. It was the nice...
Clones were killed because it was stolen genetic material. True. And if someone steals my genetic material, I will fucking take it back. Although I did check all the boxes for 23andMe, so maybe they have permission to do that, and that's my bad.
Well, there's an interesting conversation there, too, because, well, them taking the DNA samples was, of course, wrong and a violation. Like, I guess I don't really understand the repulsion that is expressed at, like, how could you have a clone, like, even the concept of passing on your DNA willingly to create a clone.
Would you want a clone if the clone was not its own person, that had, nature influencing its... who it became, but it was just Xander. There was just another Xander that was going to come up after you. Would you want that?
If I had the context of like the vastness of the universe and knowing that like me helping this population to survive means contributing something, I don't see how it takes away from me. And I think their biggest point is like, oh, it damages my legacy and it damages what I contribute to the universe. Where if you are taking into the consideration like how large all of this is and how there are probably multiple Rikers out there that we will never run into again, that are leading completely different lives and contributing to society in a different way that we will ever know about.
Well, in all the parallel universes, of course, there's infinite Rikers.
Exactly.
Well, I think it was interesting that Picard said, you're going to find the same sentiment with everyone on this ship, which I don't think is true. I think a lot of people may say, no, thank you. And some would definitely say, sure, whatever, take it.
Yeah.
I think there's also two different issues here at play, which is the theft of Riker and Pulaski's DNA, and then the act of cloning, which is, I think they were more... From what I remember the episode, they seem to be more concerned with the former rather than the latter. But like, what was their... I still feel that like the issue wasn't the fact they were cloning, was it? Or is it the fact that the cloning was like quote unquote degrading
that was the
genetic
issue
material
that they were running into medically?
Right.
And what we didn't see, but what was talked about is there was a lot of deleted copies. There was a lot of attempted clones that became, monsters or just invalid, or like their lungs were too small to breathe and they died immediately, or whatever it is. There was a lot of clones that didn't exist.
So it's like
we're not viable.
Yeah, it's like genetic experimentation at some point, right?
Yeah. And then the bigger metaphor is to abortion. And Riker... I did read this in Memory Alpha that Riker originally had a line saying, well, it's my body.
My body, my choice. Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. She said she got a lot of flack from the right on that. Like people that were very pro-life wrote her letters a lot about this scene. And
I just wanted to say too, like, I don't have the solution, and I don't think that there is a good, like, nice, easy answer. I think it would be something that would have to be worked out over time. And I get that the TV program needs it all to wrap up in a nice bow and be like, there's that. But I think there is more of a discussion there. And I think what shocked me was just the amount of disgust and shock at the way people had figured out a way to live,
Yeah, I think they were. From what I remember, I really feel like they were focusing on the fact that the bad side of the side effects of what they had done, which is what Becca mentioned, which was the failed experiments of people, and just also the fact that they were potentially degrading their own future generations in some way.
Yeah. Well, you know what part of this episode the far right would love? Referring to women as breeding stock. Because really, that's our main purpose. And they are in the conference room. They're like, Prime Minister, we can't help you clone. It's totally evil. And like, there was this moment where they all say no, Pulaski, Riker, and Picard. And then he's like, okay, no takers. Hey, do a couple of you want to come down to my planet and see something? Why didn't they go with security detail? Of course, you guys have just been in like 3 different situations where you were duped by your kindness into like getting taken advantage of, and yet, no, just go on down. It'll be fine. They won't try and force you to give your genetic material. Anyway, then it's like, no, hold on. We need a solution. All we need is a people that can become your breeding stock. And then Deanna Troi has this look in her eyes where she's like, breeding stock. Like the herds of cattle they brought along with them. Let's just assign 3 boys for every
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. They're just like, 3 to 1. That's kind of how it's going to have to go.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of problems, like, you know, the way I just stated it, but at the same time, I do like Brianna's reaction that she's like, 3 husbands, you say?
Yeah. I mean, they had to have put that in there somewhere, that it wasn't just a benefit for men, right? That women will be into this too, right?
Yeah, I think if it was a polygamy thing of the level of a man having a bunch of wives, it would have looked real bad. Yeah.
Well, polyamory is great so long as it's one woman, you know. Or, you know, if the woman wants to have other women.
No. Now, don't shame all relationship types, but polygamy historically has been not great for women, for sure.
Typically. But that could change here.
And
she has a great line, which is, I don't know that I want to be Eve.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting way of like, oh, wow.
And then they did sort of, Picard has the line of like, oh, we could take you away. We could drop you off at whatever starbase you want to. And she's like, but what about my family? He's like, yeah, they need you down there, don't they, huh? They really need you. They're going to die if you don't go. But I could take you anywhere you want. But if they're going to die.
Hey, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Riker's clones die. So they go back to the planet, kill off the clones and say, don't do this. And they deliver, well, I guess they introduce the Mariposans to the Mariposans, right?
Which is Spanish for...
the butterflies?
Moth?
Butterfly?
I think they didn't mention.
Well, I guess he's so impressed by how quaint they are, the Prime Minister, when Picard takes him on that silent tour of Cargo Bay 7, and he's just looking at this kid who's holding a baby goat, and these 2 guys laughing, and
it was
he's
a
like,
pregnant woman holding a baby goat.
Oh, was it?
Yes, because he freaks out about the belly.
Oh, that's right.
He gets close to touching. I was like, don't you touch that woman. And he doesn't. And I was like, good.
Well,
I wish Picard had just slapped his hand.
Yeah, get away from that.
He did completely insult the Brigalondi in the previous scene in the conference room when he says that they're, you know, it's going to take an enormous effort just to educate them. It's like, oh, dude.
Yeah.
No, you're real wrong. But the other issue about just assuming that this asexual people are going to be able to or want to reproduce with these people. I mean, sure, they can all live on the planet maybe and learn to cohabitate, but like these people have never had sex, never want to have sex.
Why don't they want to have sex? Did they say why they can't or won't?
They're repulsed by the idea, and that they had left it behind like 300 years ago or something.
Oh,
like that.
gosh.
Like something ridiculous like that.
What event caused a rapid
fucking
the great softening? Like, what happened?
Oh my god, I'm holding my tongue. I don't want to offend asexual people.
No, but like just the idea of a radical shift like that amongst a whole society is pretty crazy.
Softening.
But it's just, you know, getting rid of
The
the need
title
for it,
that-
finding
That's the
cloning.
title of the episode.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
What? So I also forgot about a part. There's a part where we find out Geordi can kind of tell when people lie.
Yeah. Yes.
What?
That was insane.
was
Jordy,
insane.
You've been holding out on us.
Well, it's
That's
not
like
for
Troy's
everybody, but for humans, he's got it down.
He's got it down. Like, who's gonna play poker with Geordi now?
Yeah,
Mhm.
nobody.
Actually,
he must
is he-
always win.
is
He's
he
in
in
the
those
game.
poker? He has. Okay, I can't remember if he's in those games.
Well, what he said was things like temperature and blushing and heart rate are
Right.
things he can see,
So
which
if
is
you
really
can
interesting because
control
I've talked
it-
about before on different mediums. What I read about in this book is when you become too power hungry and megalomaniacs are unable to blush. And that's like a very distinct human feature that other animals don't have. That is our way of expressing shame and like humbleness.
because they have no shame.
Yeah.
I see.
Oh, interesting. What
Mhm.
book is this from?
The one that I quote all the time, Humankind by Rutger
Mhm.
Bregman.
Excellent. Put
Mhm.
that in the show notes. Well, I feel no shame in having sat through this episode, but I'm glad to be done with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
You
we
have to
could
give it
quote
a lot of. You have to give it a lot of
the-
grains of salt for the era that it was airing and that it was written in, and sometimes it gets a little exhausting to have to give so many passes. You're just like, okay.
All right.
Well, sometimes you go up the long ladder
Mm.
just to go down the short rope.
Do they ever
Original
actually
quote.
say the phrase in that
No.
in the show? Yeah, no.
That is the idiom that the title is taken from.
I don't know why they did that, which just simply is like a gallows thing, right? Is up the long ladder, down the short rope is to be hung. So like I don't
So who's getting hung? Definitely not those involved in the Great Softening.
Riker.
That seems like a great place to end the episode.
I mean, I think we should say something together like what Riker always is, which Brenna also is this episode, which is
Horny on
Maine.
You didn't do the next episode teaser.
You're right, I can. Because next week
Ooh.
next week it is Manhunt, which sounds much more adventurous than it is because our good friend Loaxana Troy arrives on the Enterprise and she's got one goal: to find a husband.
Ooh.
Because she is.
Horny
on
Maine. Nicely done, Becca.
Gong.
Bye.